All right, so we're kicking off a brand new series this morning, and here's what I need you guys to do. You were each given a starburst when you walked in the room. So what I need you to do is stand up, and I know you just got comfy, but I need all my pink starbursts to come sit over in this section over here. I need all my orange starbursts to come sit in the middle section right here. And I need all my red starbursts to come over and sit in this section over here. In the chairs. So middle section. There you go. Good. We're kicking off this new series this morning, and in this series we're going to be talking about how there's different things that are awesome about our world today. One of them is social media, right? How many of you guys have social media of some kind? You have Instagram, Snapchat. I doubt any of you have Facebook. Any of you have Facebook? No, didn't think so. Oh, you do? Okay, awesome. So a couple of you have Facebook, but most of you, do you have something else that's non-traditional, not Instagram, Snapchat? Anybody have anything different? Okay, cool. So, but we live, MySpace. Get out of here. I didn't even have MySpace. So the cool thing about social media and the internet is that we all can see a bunch of everybody else's posts. We can see everybody else's opinions, their feedback, their ideas, and it's really cool. In fact, there's a lot that we can kind of unify on because of social media. There's lots of stuff that we have in common. In fact, you have a friend that posts something, you like it, or you see their story, you can interact with them in that way. You can do the little face animation things, the masks that, the filters. That's pretty cool. But one of the downsides to the internet or social media is that there's a lot of opinions that are different. And most of the time, it's really easy to find somebody that you disagree with. You can divide on something based on what you see online. Whether it's a news story, a video somebody posted, somebody's opinion about a certain hot topic or issue. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? You've seen the mean comments on, it's not so much on Instagram and Snapchat as it is on Facebook. But it's out there. There's news reports that go, you guys have sponsored ads that show up on your Instagram feeds, and a lot of them, they talk about stuff, especially during election season, about stuff that we have reasons to disunify on, reasons to not get along, reasons to divide. And one of those has been a hot topic issue in our culture for actually the last several years. It's been in our history and has recently come up again as a hot topic, and so we're going to try to talk about that today, and that is the topic of race. How do we handle this discussion of race in a healthy way in the church? How do we take that healthy way of discussing race and take it outside of the church? How do we have good godly conversations when it comes to topics like this? And it's really important. In fact, I want to define a couple of terms before you guys this morning, and that is one, race and ethnicity. So race, it typically refers to something that you can't change. Like you're born a certain way, it's something about yourself that you cannot change and will be with you for the rest of your life. Ethnicity is more in relation to geography or a cultural norm or traditions or customs. That's more ethnicity. And it has a lot to do with race sometimes, but they're not always the same. And so this morning, for this morning's purposes, when I say race, I'm talking about race and ethnicity together, okay? We all good? Same page there? Okay. The other thing I want to say before we go any further is that race matters. Race matters. And we'll get into why I think that and why I think it's important for us to have this conversation. But right now, suffice it to say that race matters. And it's really difficult to have these kinds of conversations for a few reasons. I think one of them is that it makes us uncomfortable. Either we think about it a lot because of our environment, or we don't think of it a lot because of our environment. Sometimes you're right in the middle, but a lot of times we just don't talk about it a whole lot, so it feels uncomfortable. We don't know exactly what to do with this topic. Another reason might be that we simply don't know what to say, and so we keep quiet about the issue. We don't say a whole lot. Or maybe another reason is we don't want to make anyone upset or angry. And I think that's the biggest reason in the church today we have a hard time talking about this. We don't want to make anyone upset. We don't want to make anyone angry. And so sometimes we just stay clear of hot topic issues in the church. And this is one of them. But race matters, and it's important that we have these conversations. So before we dive any deeper into this discussion, let me give you a few words that I think will help you understand this idea a little more, because there's a few words that come up when this discussion happens. So actually, where are my pink starbursts at? Can I get a whoop whoop? There you go. Pink. I like pink the best. So just because you guys have the pink starburst, I'm going to give you guys some candy. There you go. Here you go. Back row, you're loved too. You get some candy. If you didn't get any, there's some on the floor. I know I threw plenty out there. So I just love the strawberry taste that the pink starburst has. In fact, the strawberry starburst I think is the best because it tastes the best and it has the most flavor. And to be really honest, tough guys wear pink. So pink is just the best Starbucks. Would you guys agree? No, you can't. Starburst, sorry. They all sound the same. Starburst. I had Starbucks the other day, so it must be on my brain. But pink Starbursts are the best. Would you guys agree? No. You wouldn't because you're orange and red, right? Just for the sake of our discussion. So pink, if I like pink the best, there's a word for that when it comes to this discussion, okay? And that is bias. Okay? Bias is, especially when we talk about in terms of racial bias, it means that we have a preference or opinion about someone based solely on their race. When all other things are equal, someone is chosen or not chosen solely because of their race. So let's just, for an example, if you are in band and you're both auditioning for the number one seat on the alto saxophone, which is what I played, which is the best instrument ever when it comes to the band world. So let's say you have two people auditioning for the number one spot, and both of them do equally well. They get the same amount of points. They're both equally good. If one is chosen over the other because of their race, at that point, that is bias. You're choosing one over the other because of your personal preference. And that is what happens with racial bias. Sometimes we don't even realize we do it. Other times, we very intentionally do it. And that is what has made this discussion very heated in our culture today. It's one of the things that contribute to that. Now, all of you red Starbursts out here. I almost said Starbucks again. I have to be really careful of that. All you red Starbursts. Now, you're in a different boat. In fact, you don't think pink is the best at all. You know that red is the best. In fact, pink and orange, they're rather beneath you, if we're being honest. You think that the pink and the orange are less than you, and in fact, you are superior just because you are the red Starburst. You know what color teachers grade in? At least when I was growing up, it was red. Because red is the best. Teachers, people with authority, people who are superior, use red. And so, red Starburst, you think that you're better than everybody else, and that is called racism. That's the second word. This is the biggest one that comes up in this conversation. That's racism. Racism is the judgment, discrimination, or hatred directed towards someone of a different race. And a lot of times this has been played out in our history where one race thinks that they're better than everybody else simply because of the way that they were born. And to think less of other people or to think that you are superior because of that and that alone is racism. And finally, orange, let's talk about you guys. See, you guys are a little bit different. You're neither red or pink, but you know what? Maybe you're one of them, but not likely. In fact, here's where you're at. You see the red thinking that they're all better than everybody else, and you just think that they're arrogant and, well, dumb for thinking that. Now, pink, you think that pink is, well, they're entitled because they just think they're better than everyone else because they got candy and no one else did. They're unappreciative, they're ungrateful. So you got the pink on that side that are a bunch of entitled stooges, and you got the reds over here that just think that they're better than everybody else because they're red and not orange or pink. So you're here in the middle, and what you do is you form an opinion of red based on what you saw on Instagram or Snapchat, or you base an opinion on pink because just what you see on the outside. And what that is called is prejudice. And that's the third word that comes up a lot in this discussion about race. And prejudice is this. Prejudice is when opinions, beliefs, or feelings are formed about a person or a group of people without facts or knowledge. In other words, you saw a post, or you saw a news article, or you watched your parents were watching the news while you were getting ready for bed, and you saw a big video highlight about this whole issue. And so you know what, you form an opinion about a people or group based on what you've seen on the outside, without actually getting to know anyone personally. And that is prejudice. And all three of these things, racial bias, racism, and prejudice, they all are key factors that we need to be aware of when having this discussion. Because like I said at the beginning, race matters. Race matters. And here's why. It's not because anyone is better than the others. It's because God cares about it. Race matters because God cares about it. And as we dive into His Word this morning, I think we're going to come to the realization of why that is. Why race matters, why God cares about it, what we should do about it as a church. Because like we've talked about, it's awkward to have this conversation sometimes. We don't know what to say. It makes us uncomfortable. We don't want to make anyone upset or angry. And to be honest, sometimes our own environments are not too it's not too different from what we're always around. And so when there's not enough difference in our own environments, we don't know how people on the other side of the spectrum feel. And this can be a really easy trap to fall in. So when it comes to seeing other people, we have to start seeing them through God's lens. If God cares about everybody, then we should look at this issue and this discussion through God's lens. And so how do we do that? Well, let's dive into the Word real quick. But real quick, let me give you a backstory on what's happening. Paul is writing, he was a Jew, he was a good Jew, and he's writing to the church in Galatia. And what has happened is, as we've talked about in the last several weeks, is that there was the people group of the Jews, or the Israelites, that God had chosen in the Old Testament, right? And He brought them up out of Egypt. He led them through the desert. He gave them their own king, made them a nation, and he made the Israelites to bless the other nations. But they failed at that. And so when Jesus comes, he fulfills that. He does what they were supposed to do, but were never really doing. And then He dies, He raises from the dead, and now God says to care about everybody. He says, no, there's no more just Jews or just Israelites, a chosen people. My church is the new Israel, is the chosen people. And so here's what Paul is writing to the church in Galatia. He says, for you are all children of God through faith in Christ Jesus. You are all children of God through what? Not by race, right? Not because you're Jewish, not because you are from Israel. No, you are God's children because of faith. And all who have been united with Christ in baptism have put on Christ, like putting on new clothes. There's no longer Jew or Gentile, slave or free, male and female, for you are all one in Christ Jesus. And so ultimately, notice he doesn't say you are all the same. He says you are all one. And that's an important distinction, an important difference, because it's okay to be different. In fact, Paul uses other letters in the New Testament. He talks about how as a church we are all of one body, but of that body there are many members, there are many parts. Each of us have different gifts and talents, different abilities that God has gifted us with, and we each have different parts about us that make us unique, that make us a part of the body. So we are all not necessarily the same, but we are all one. We have all put on Christ. And even if we trace this back to the very beginning of creation, when God was creating each and every one of us, this is what He says in Genesis chapter 1. So God created human beings in His own image, in the image of God. He created them, male and female. He created them. So we all reflect God's image. Race matters. God cares about all of us because we are all one. We are all created in His image. And so it's important that as we have this discussion, as we live our lives, that we live in such a way that we see through the lens that we are all created in God's image. We are all united. We don't have to discriminate. We don't have to have prejudice. We shouldn't have bias. And that's why this conversation matters so much. Because sometimes without even thinking, we can fall into the temptation of being biased or having a prejudice. I think most of us fall into prejudice, if I'm being honest. Because we don't know one side or the other as well as we probably should. And so we form our own opinions and assumptions based on what we've seen on the outside rather than how we personally get to know people. And I think that's the biggest issue, because when Jesus came, he didn't worry about what other people would think of him. He just cared and he loved everyone. In fact, he loved the people that the Jews were mad that he loved them because they were considered unclean by the old covenant. And so Jesus says, no, here's a new covenant. Love. Remember that series we had a few weeks ago about the greatest commandment, to love God and love others? Yeah. At the end of the day, that's really what it comes down to. We all reflect the image of God. And so if we're going to navigate this discussion correctly, if we're going to navigate this in a healthy way, then here's a couple things I would have for you to do. Is one, check your thoughts. Because our actions and our behaviors are ultimately driven by our thoughts, so the way that we think about people matters. And this applies beyond just race. This applies to every area of life. We've got to have our thoughts in check. So be careful what you're thinking. Conversations. Make sure, and this can be really difficult, but make sure when you have conversations with people, they are in a healthy way. You don't phrase things like, I think they, or I wish you, or I think I. Just don't even start that way. That just sets you up to be divisive right off the bat. But if you say like, help me understand, that puts you in a position of humility and opens the door for healthy conversation. And you know what, you can say, hey, can you help me understand something? Hey, I know this is awkward, but you know, I respect you, and I can this be a safe place that we just have a healthy discussion about a weird topic? And then just start it that way. Because you know what, when we put ourselves in a position of humility and we ask other people, and this applies again to more than just race. When you have a friend, instead of just talking about your day and how everything is going and how you wish this and you wish that, if you stopped and asked, hey, how are you doing? Help me understand how you feel here. Then you know what, that shows empathy. That's putting yourself in their shoes. And that's a life skill that will help you immensely. Not only when it comes to this topic, but in every area. So it's again, just really important that we get this right when we have conversations. And the last way that you can go to apply this is in your own relationships. If your own relationships are not diverse, then you're not going to have a very diverse perspective. And maybe it's unintentional. You just realize, you just don't go out of your way to talk to people because they're different from you. And this is a really hard one to admit sometimes, because no one wants to admit, I'm not racist, right? No one wants to admit that this is a thing for them, but that's why it's important to constantly check our hearts. Make sure that our hearts and our minds are in the right place when it comes to this. So as you guys get ready to go to your groups, I want you guys to just think through this. And here's the question I want you to ask. What's one question that I have about race? As you guys go to your groups, what's one question that you have? And think about that question. You know, and let's just agree to make our groups a safe place to have this conversation. We don't need to polarize. We don't need to put people on opposite ends of the spectrum, because remember, we are all one. We all reflect God's image, and the way that we talk about this issue should reflect that. It should reflect our love for each other. So I'm going to pray. I want you guys to think about this question and head to your groups for this discussion.